I think we are live. I think we're live. I also think, which is something surprising to some people, but it does happen. My brain operates, and then I say words about things that my brains are operating with. It's a whole process. Anyway, uh, with that being said, we've got some words that need to be said for sound check because words and sound check words. So everybody say a word.
Eggplant.
Word,
Eggplant.
word.
Cool. All right. We be sweet. And um, there's plenty to discuss today. There's plenty to discuss going forward. I want to remind everybody that Dana is being ousted by fascists. And if you want to find out more about that situation, there was a stream prior to this one called the Dana Defense Stream. And much was discussed in that stream. So, with all that being said, there's much more to discuss in this regard, and in many others. So, with like general vibes in this stream, are gonna be discussing various like aspects of recent corruption and corruption in general in these circles. And we'll start with Bryce's story after intros. Everybody here say words about who they are. Hello, Kareem. And we'll start talking about things that have recently been happening, starting with Bryce after intros. So, Bryce, Jamie, Kareem.
Cool. Well, I'm Bryce. I am a congressional district rep in the Wisconsin Libertarian Party. I am also now a Mises Caucus state organizer, and yeah, real fun times here in the state of Wisconsin right now.
Jamie?
Yeah, and I'm Jamie. I'm a member in Wisconsin and in Michigan. There's been a whole lot that's happened in Michigan in the last 2 years. It's pretty much dysfunctional. The party recognized by the LNC is probably around 32 members strong. The rest of the membership is just basically sitting on the sidelines, waiting for the dust to settle, uninterested in the tyrant that is the LNC's current chair. Yeah, that's a good summary.
Kareem.
All right. I'm Kareem from the LPMC in Pennsylvania. I can't really speak to some of what's going on here because I haven't looked into it like in detail. Does she have like that phone number? What's going on with this? I'm more focused on. I started to think about it. I'm like, okay, I can do the local thing politically here. I can win with that. Outside from that, I can support Chase Oliver. And I don't agree with Chase on everything, but like I'm not going to slander the guy for no reason. I think that's really like, petty. Why are we slandering, a guy because, he has some disagreements on some social issues. At this point, that's the stupidest thing ever. Like it's like nuclear war, genocide, like inflation, and you're like, well, I don't know about like, would you take your kids to see a drag show? I'm like, I really don't care. At this point, I don't care. If it stops them from getting nuked, probably. But the thing that I'll do is, yeah, I'll support Chase Oliver. I'm still part of the LPMC. But looking into like how do you build dual power structures and understanding leftist terminology and leftist stuff, like communalism, how to build local structures, got a small garden going. So yeah, and I do Anarch Unity. I will get on that eventually. And then I'm Cream6633 on Twitter.
All right, so the first thing that I'll say is not you, Kareem, but the person who runs the LPPA or the LPMC Pennsylvania like social media accounts needs to go fuck themselves because of what they've been saying and how they've been saying it. Also, you got earphones. That'd be great. So that is one of the things that I'll start off strong with, because the giant elephant in the room is the fact that these people are massive hypocrites. I put out a tweet thread today that is it's doing somewhat well, contrary to my expectations, because I have exactly zero fucking confidence in libertarian circles to be libertarian, much less boost libertarian messages. But I said libertarians hate cancel culture until they find half-decade-old Chase Oliver posts. They hate collectivism till racial or sexual minorities get power or press. They support freedom of association until anyone uses it for pro-vax or mask organizations. I could go on, many such cases. These people love to say they're against the mob, but when they're running the mob, or a similar enough mob invites them to join, they'll do it immediately. There are some exceptions, but you're now watching many of them demonstrate a lack of principle right before your eyes. If libertarians say they're trying to message people, and even though they won't win, they'll convert people along the way, and that's why it's okay they're working with MAGA, because maybe Trump supporters will switch teams, the fact that Chase improved over the years could be a victory. Instead, they want you to pretend it's not even happening and reach back in Chase's history as far back as they can for any scraps to be held against him. Remember that the next time they fight cancel culture. They were never against it. They just hate being the target. And I also followed up, because it really infuriates me, fucking when this shit when this shit happens and they start down this path of cancel culture even though they allegedly hate it. I said, one guy forced you to fund vaccines, locked you down over COVID, added $8 trillion in debt, took your bump stocks, supported red flag, take the gun first, due process later. That guy is Trump, not Chase Oliver. Guess who Mises caucus libertarians would rather party with? So that's my take. I think that it's an insidious and evil thing that's happening, and these people have misprioritized the fuck out of themselves, and like that. So there's plenty on that, but we'll be getting into that a little bit later. Bryce says something has come up in his local situation that really chaps his ass, so I figure we can get into that. Because if I understand correctly, it's yet another instance where it seems like bylaws are being weaponized. So full explanation, as full as possible, would be appreciated.
Okay, so to give proper context to all this, we're gonna have to go all the way back to when the LPWI held their around May 11th. So around May 11th, actually, it goes a little bit further than that back, actually. So Stephen Ecker is our current chair, and yes, he's a Mises caucus member, full disclosure. But so when the topic of region joining first came up, according to him, obviously he's not here to speak for himself, he said that he was talking to some of the Region 6 states and trying to figure out kind of what was going on there, because I'm sure his original intent was to just rejoin Region 6. However, because of Tuna, for anybody in the LP, being an absolute garbage region rep, and just the region in general kind of falling apart, a bunch of states were jumping ship, and he was scrambling to figure out kind of where everything was going. Gets in touch with Montana and Minnesota. They're talking about Region 1, and he decided, because based on his own views, being regionless would be an absolute shit show for Wisconsin. He decided that, yeah, I'm going to go join Region 1. Or at least I'm going to discuss joining Region 1. Eventually, he signed off on it, which technically, according to our bylaws, that on its own, he absolutely has the authority to do. There is kind of sort of some precedent from the last 2 years worth of national conventions that our XCOM has decided that as a body as a whole. But as our documents are currently written, he's absolutely allowed to do that because our chair is allowed to make unilateral decisions on ordinary business, which regional discussions within the 90 days prior to a national convention absolutely would constitute ordinary business. Where it kind of got murky was supposedly, which I will get into why I say supposedly in a second, but supposedly there was some financial contributions included in that agreement, which if that were true, would be a violation of Article 4 of our bylaws portion of our governing document, because that, like, financial contributions have to be decided by the XCOM as a whole. So he announced on May 19th at the XCOM meeting that we're officially in Region 1. Initially, Mr. Chinese and Mr. Anderson said, and I bring them up because they're the ones that are pushing for all this stuff going on right now. They said that he did have the authority technically to do so, but that they would have liked notice, which is fair. I would agree with that. However, the following day, on May 20th, they decided that they were going to demand an emergency XCOM meeting be called to rule his decision out of order, which ultimately it was ruled out of order. However, where that gets murky is under Article 3, Section 1 of our bylaws. Any order of business not clearly written out in our Constitution and bylaws, Roberts becomes our governing document. Roberts has a provision in there that says business meetings require a minimum 24-hour notice. That 24-hour notice was not given. Matter of fact, I believe it was even less than 12 hours. It was close to like 9 or 10. So technically that meeting in of itself was out of order. Nevertheless, our Wisconsin continued to kind of try to pressure Stephen into rescinding his Region 1 agreement. And he, whether I agree with what he did or not, he decided to stick to his principles and say, not only did I not initially violate the bylaws, but the meeting in which you guys stated I did was out of order. So I'm not going to admit fault to something I didn't do, all because of an out of order business meeting. So we got stuck in Region 1. Now, fast forward to this month's XCOM meeting. It kind of quieted down for a while. All that was really going on was Mr. Chinese, as he brought up in the stream that he joined, was cycling through a petition to have the National Judicial Committee hear Wisconsin's case for not being in Region 1. Anyways, like the day before this month's XCOM meeting, he had requested that it get added to the business portion of the meeting that we vote to censure Stephen Ecker for his conduct. Day of the XCOM happens. The case gets heard. And I believe it was 11 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain in favor of censuring Stephen. Immediately following that ruling, Mr. Chinese makes a motion to have the Constitution, to have the XCOM push for the Constitution and Bylaws Committee to vote on suspending Stephen Ecker as chair. Now, that one passed 9 votes, 9 yes, 4 no. Basically, his argument for it was hearkening back to the financial agreement that supposedly is in there, which I will get to in a minute, I promise. As well as actions unbecoming of the chair. What does that mean? It's whatever. You can interpret that however you want. Basically, they were arguing that because he didn't rescind the offer, that he was his actions were unbecoming, and they voted to remove him, or at least have the Constitution and Bylaws Committee vote to remove him. That the meeting for that was yesterday. I attended it, speaking on Stephen's behalf. Full disclosure. Ultimately, 5 votes to 0, Stephen was suspended. Now, going through the financial element of that region agreement, if I can find the picture of it. Come on, where are you? There we are. What it says is, it is anticipated that the LNC will meet in person at least 2 times a year, which poses a financial obligation on the representative, or IVs, in order to attend. The regional chairs agree that upon election of any representative, they will enter into a separate agreement, if requested by the regional representative, for either the regional representative or the regional alternate to attend each meeting at a maximum amount of $1,000 per meeting spread amongst the regional states, or a maximum of 2 meetings per year, whether or not the LNC meets more frequently, this separate agreement may allocate the cost sharing equally or proportional upon the percentage of national sustaining membership in regional states. Now that, from how I'm interpreting it, is not actually a financial commitment, but rather parameters for how a financial commitment would be conducted should one be requested. We are by no means obligated to financially contribute to the regional reps, nor from my conversations with the regional reps do they have any intent of financially forcing us to fund anything. I don't think they have the authority to do so per the regional agreement. So technically, the financial bylaw was not violated, which then goes back to, does Stephen have the authority to unilaterally decide which region we're in? And based on how our bylaws are currently written, the answer to that is yes. So we're unfortunately in a very messy situation where, similar to how some other states, and it seems like a trend, especially in the Midwest, the dominating faction of our state party is using some very murky interpretations of our bylaws to try and punish the minority faction at the time. And there's really only one way this can go, unless we kind of course correct, and that is we end up another one of the shit show states that's going on right now. So I'm fighting really hard to avoid ratifying his suspension. I'm trying to whip support to oppose ratifying the suspension right now, and that's kind of where I'm at.
So you're concerned about another split.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about another split. It seems like that's exactly what's gonna fucking happen.
So if
because
that go.
because we don't have a JC for our state party, so there is no way to appeal any decisions made by the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, which means which there's already been bylaws violations throughout the course of this process, if the meeting were ruled out, like if any more of them happen, there's really only 3 ways this could go down, and 2 of them are immediately going to result in a absolute nightmare of a scenario in Wisconsin. And Jamie knows what I'm talking about, because this is more or less what happened in her own state.
Well, Jamie, you got any updates about that?
Well, I don't know if there's any particular updates in Michigan, but it's this constant reinterpretation, interpretation, creative interpretation, bylaw fair. If I know lawfare is a term, so I'm making up a new one. It's bylaw fair now.
Yeah.
But it's just this escalating nightmare. And Bryce is right. I mean, I went to convention and I was made aware of the Region 1 rep. And a couple of those bylaws were cited. And, you know, understanding, being a new member for Wisconsin, the exact reading without context, yeah, it seemed like there was some issues there. And I supported it for reasons, and partly because I knew what was happening in Michigan. And I'm ultra sensitive about that. But watching the meeting this last, what was it, a week ago, Bryce? A little over a week ago.
It was last Sunday.
Yeah, where the censure happened, and then the immediate motion to suspend. I definitely was concerned, again, because of my experience in Michigan, where, you know, it was this chronic escalation of bylaw fair and gamesmanship on who could control the party, who was right, whose interpretation was right. And, you know, we're fractured. I mean, as I said in my intro, there's nothing going on in Michigan except name calling and basically inactivity, because nobody wants to deal with the bullshit.
Yeah, and because, like, if you do anything while this sort of shit is happening, it might be thrown up in the air by any amount of decisions, because, like, who was in power at the time of these things happening? Was that in order? Blah, blah, blah. If I understand correctly. Like, nobody wants to do anything because they can't really count on it being, like, even a stable situation to begin with, much less, you know, like, the decisions sticking because of that.
Yeah, you know, it makes me wonder, do they want a stable party in Michigan? Do they want a stable party in Wisconsin? Or don't they? Or do they want it last week, but now with this candidate, maybe not? You know, it's just, I joined the party in 2018. And yeah, I'm not an old timer, but I've been around for a minute. And I have just seen it start swirling the drain. It's just, nothing gets done. Everybody's focused inward. It's a circular, inward-facing firing squad. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't a Republican or a Democrat plot from the outside to destroy the LP, I mean, everything inside looks I mean, I'd buy
Exactly
it.
the same. Yeah.
I'd buy it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
Who's picking up the gun first?
yeah, and it's like I keep it being brought back to the way the Chase thing is being handled because like so many of these like fucking petty little states are being like oh we don't recognize Chase as the nominee and it's like well fantastic he is and so what you're going to scuttle all of that and what run to Trump and hope that he'll pardon Ross? Congratulations, he might pardon Ross and at the same time not do anything about the actual policies that are creating these problems to begin with. He didn't deschedule weed. He could have done that. Any president could do that. But Trump is the same as Biden in that regard. He's the same as Biden in so many regards, and Angela would rather work with Trump than Chase. And it seems like this. It seems like everybody's just like, if I'm not at the reins, I don't want the horse to move. Because it's going to move in the wrong direction. And, that might be the case, but libertarians should be principled enough to know that they're on the team with the like horse moving in the right direction. And if they're not, then there's a structural problem that needs to be solved. It's not a matter of like whether or not certain bylaws are in line with certain things. It's whether or not the people actually give enough of a fuck about libertarianism and a libertarian outcome to let the party even run, much less like. And so like when I saw that thing with Dana the other week, I watched that meeting live. Somebody gave me a link because like you know if you want me to become the shit disturber in your ranks, feel free to throw me links to things like this because I was filled with such bilious rage watching this basically fascist pile-on of like this woman over like not just her religion but also asking for basic things like maybe understand and follow the bylaws and don't do things that are illegal if you're going to run a political party. And that got her interrupted. That got her silenced. And, fucking people like that, they love their mute button. And I've experienced that before. And so, like, I can't stand that shit. It just seems like these people. And like, look, I'm an anarchist. I'm not a part of these parties. I'm not a part of these like local like I'm not a caucus. The point I'm trying to make is if you do have any inclination on doing the right thing with these sorts of things, it should be smooth running. And they don't even want it to be like rough running. It seems to me that like they're happy if this thing just chugs and doesn't even move. Like so many meetings just moving forward with nothing happening except like maybe somebody gets like fucking bullied out of the group. And that's just it if you wanted libertarians to look like if society that they control was theirs, it would just be nothing but petty chaos and bullshit and nothing getting done. That's what this looks like. So congratulations. So it's that sort of thing for me. Like, I don't know if that's too cynical a perspective, but...
No, honestly, from what I'm seeing, that... Here's the thing. For the last 2 years, Wisconsin, regardless of who is, like, controlling the party, the last 2 years, Wisconsin stayed completely out of the drama. We honestly didn't even know what the fuck was going on in our neighboring states, let alone at the national level. We just kind of kept ourselves. Then all of a sudden, for some reason, mind you, any other year, if you asked the LPWI members to name who our regional rep was, chances are they don't have a fucking clue. But now all of a sudden, and I would get it if there was like a clear bylaws violation being done in this regional agreement. The problem is there's not. So for them to actually like care when literally any other year they wouldn't, it like I'm all for having the JC hear their case for why we shouldn't be in Region 1. Go for it. You should have a right to present your case. This bullshit with censuring our chair, trying to suspend our chair, successfully suspending our chair for a maybe bylaws violation, not a definitive one, a maybe one. And then because he chose not to uphold your out of order meeting is bullshit. Like, I'm sorry, there's no other way to dice it. It's fucking bullshit, and I'm getting really annoyed with this shit now. Like, there are people that are not Mises Caucus people that I am friends with that are very, very fucking annoyed with this shit right now. Because they don't even want to be a part of it anymore. I'm not going to name names because they've only told me privately, but damn.
Yeah, and like, there's this memo that, like, God, it's so fucking trashy. This memo by the Libertarian Party of Florida. There's a full article write-up of it by a friend of mine on Liberty Century's Medium publication. And the memo is nothing but jacking off about how they don't like Chase. And so they reject the nomination or whatever, it passed a motion calling on the Libertarian National Committee to investigate allegations regarding the nominations of Chase Oliver and Mike Tiermont as the presidential and vice presidential candidate of the party, respectively. And so it goes over how basically their claims are baseless and they have no real actual, like, sustainable fucking claims in this regard. But that it's a way more complicated thing, and that it's a symptom of division. This is a quote from the article. These allegations, while for the most part unfounded, indicate a much deeper problem within the LP, the boiling over of ongoing division and fragmentation. The past few years have seen the LP get into many conflicts within itself, leading even to varying lawsuits against members and state affiliates. If the party is to move through and survive such divisions, the causes of inner turmoils must be addressed. What those causes are specifically, I am unsure, but as long as the issue is over who has power over the party, and not the serving of the members of the party and the growth of the party so as to lead to political progress toward freedom for all individuals, nothing will be solved. So, like, I think that pretty much, like, to me, and to multiple other people, like, that seems to be the crux of it. And he also clarifies at the end, the LPO, Kara Schultz, Joshua Hlavka, Daniel Ziemba, Secretary of the LPMI, Chris Powell, Chair of the OKLP, and Todd Hagopian did not respond to requests for comment. Jay Norton, Chair of the OKLP-JC, and Connor I'm not going to pronounce this right, Connor Nepomuceno? Nepomuceno? I don't care. Chair of the LPMI-JC gave no comment, though Connor provided the LPMI-JC decision files referenced above. And so, like, there's plenty to go over in that article, and there's plenty that people could, like, glean from it. But it seems to me that what they tried to do with this memo is, like, reignite all of the same old bullshit that was already, like, fucking handled at the convention. And if it was already handled at the convention, then what the fuck is the point of this memo? And additionally, some of this memo seems to be directly referring to delegates that literally a court issued a restraining order that, like, it was, you have to seat these people, and if you don't, you'll be in contempt of court. So it seems to be the same exact people that they're concerned with in this fucking memo. And, I directly asked questions of Lisa Liberty over here, fucking on Twitter, and she did not respond to anything I had to fucking say. So, like, it's one of those situations where it's like, it seems like everybody just wants to claw for the power, and the most corrupt people are winning because they're willing to do corruption.
I mean, so you were specifically touching on the Michigan one with the court order. There was also Washington and Oklahoma, and there is actually those ones were not court ordered, and there actually is looking back on it. some serious bylaws violations by those states with regards to those delegates. But the Michigan one, I mean, that one is a matter of public record at this point. There's not even a point in touching on that one.
Well, you're free to
But
say you're free to talk about the others. Absolutely, if there's some discrepancies, and then I'll read respectively. Like after you say it, I'll read the things from the article that pertain to that.
so I believe with the Washington one specifically, there was something to do with like how they were seated at their state convention. I'd have to go through Washington's bylaws specifically to point to the exact reference point. But there was something to do with how they were seated at their state convention that was like a very blatant bylaws violation. Plus, they were out of state members. Like 12 out of the 14 they seated were out of state. And so there's some stuff of that. Oklahoma, I'm a lot less familiar with, admittedly.
Well, I'll read both sections. And keep in mind that this is somebody else's words. This is not my words. But he's a good friend, and he looked into a lot of this stuff with like fine-tooth comb, because like he wants the corruption to stop as well. So that maybe we can get some liberty up in this bitch. But like the general vibe that he had, these are the two sections on the two states you just brought up. The memo claims the listing of 15 delegates to the LP of Oklahoma's delegation was in violation of the bylaws of the LP, citing Article 10, Section 4E, which states that by 7/8 vote, the convention may approve additional delegates and alternates whose names and addresses are submitted to the Credentials Committee during the convention. This point was brought up by Chatterton, chair of the LP of Michigan and delegate present at the National Convention. And the issue was sustained by McCardle, chair of the LP. However, these were appealed and overruled by the delegation twice. First by a simple majority who, following the appeal of the chair's ruling by Pietro Garaci, I don't care, delegate from the LP of New York, voted for the amendment of the Convention Committee's list of delegates to include the 15 OKLP delegates, and by a two-third majority approving the seating of the OKLP delegates as well as the LP of Washington's delegates, and amending the LP bylaws to change the 7/8 majority needed in Article 10, Section 4E to a two-thirds majority. The claim by the authors is that this was in violation of the bylaws is also unfounded, as according to the EC of the OKLP, the list of the 15 delegates were presented to the Credentials Committee before the start of the convention. The section cited only applies to delegates added and submitted to the Credentials Committee after the convention had started, and the addition of these delegates was made as an amendment to the list made by the CC, which would fall under simple majority vote. There may still be arguments for the illegality of the delegates appointed. During the convention, the chair of the CC and of the LPFEC, Joshua Hlavka, had argued that the chosen delegates were in violation of Article 15, Section 5 of the OKLP's bylaws, which state in part, out-of-state delegates may be seated as delegates representing Oklahoma during the national convention for unfilled seats with the majority vote of duly elected national delegates. End quote. Hlavka states that because the delegates that were out of state were chosen before the convention, it was in violation of the bylaws to allow them, since it said that they may be seated during the national convention. However, Rex Lawhorn, a former member of the Judicial Committee and former chair of the Bylaws Committee, the OKLP, and overlooked the creation of that section of the bylaws, denies it. Quote, "The short answer is that they are wrong, have zero authority to interpret our bylaws, and are grasping at straws." End quote. This is in line with the official ruling of the JC, which stated that the delegate list was in full accordance to their bylaws, as the emphasis that Hlavka puts on the specific parts of the section contradict with the spirit of the bylaws, in which, quote, "delegates representing Oklahoma during the National Convention is to be read as a whole item, with the last four describing an attribute of the delegates rather than how the delegates were to be selected." Again, the basis for the accusations put forth in the memo appear to be unfounded. We shall also see this in regards to the Washington delegates. Before I proceed, I will allow responses to that.
I mean, again, so what I believe they're referring to with the 7/8 vote is that, and I believe Angela touched on this herself, feel however you will about her, with the Oklahoma and Washington delegation specifically, I believe she has the authority to rule appeals to like changing the voting requirement for seating delegates with those ones specifically out of order, and would then for still require the 7/8. With Michigan, she didn't do that. She required a simple majority because of the circumstances surrounding Michigan. But I believe with Oklahoma and Washington specifically, if they were not presented before convention, there wouldn't have been an appeal to change the voting requirement to seating them. Could have been and probably should have been ruled out of order. Beyond that, though, I really don't have any further comment on those two. It is what it is. It's already over.
Well, in the Washington case, he goes on to say, just like the OKLP delegation, the memo alleges that the 14 delegates chosen for the LP of Washington's delegation were not properly selected, requiring the 7/8 selection mentioned earlier and brought up by Chatterton and McArdle. And they also were allowed in via both a simple majority following the appeal of Mimi Robson, a delegate of the LP of California, and then the 2/3 majority. Again, because the delegates were chosen before the convention and the list had been given to the CC prior to the convention, the amendment to the CC listings to allow the delegates did not require a 7/8 majority, as it did not fall under that section of the LP bylaws. There may still be possibilities of illegality, as some of the delegates were from out of state, unlike the OKLP, the bylaws of the LPWA do not have a section stating that out-of-state delegates can be appointed prior to the convention. Article 11, Section D1 of the LP-WA bylaws reads in part, all delegates and representatives to national conventions of the Libertarian Party must be sustaining members of the state party at the time of their participation in the convention. Unfilled seats may be filled at the national convention by a 3/5 vote of the entire state delegation. It may include people who are not residents of Washington state, as long as they fulfill the other requirements and there are no other available members desiring to participate who do meet the requirement to be residents of Washington state. End quote. However, Colin Morgan, chair of the LPY, is sure that the delegates were chosen in accordance to their bylaws. Quote, LPWA is extremely confident that our delegates were validly selected per our bylaws. Our judicial committee held a hearing to interpret some bylaws that had been brought into question by an outside party. Our SEC voted unanimously in support of the JC ruling. Our delegation chair followed that ruling accurately, and as party chair, not a single delegate nor member have communicated even a concern to me about our bylaws not being followed. Therefore, I speak for the party to say that we stand by our delegation as being legally selected in good faith with substantial effort to the best of our ability. We did not knowingly and with very high confidence did not unknowingly seat any delegates inappropriately. And as an update to this 621, the JC ruling mentioned by Morgan has been published and can be found at the link linked there. So basically, both parties are standing by their delegations, and it seems like there was exactly 0 violations because the ruling in question, the 7/8, would have been about like delegates selected at convention, not prior to, and these were listed and like the list was submitted before the convention, so it wouldn't even apply according to these readings of the bylaws. And so it seems like what this thing is being used for, the 7/8 thing, is being used as sort of a bully pulpit, like in a very similar way to other bylaws in other places, to remove people who it seems were like reasonably selected and reasonably seated delegates, so that they couldn't like be considered valid. And it seems like it's because they don't like Chase, and because it would help them use it as a leverage against potentially like his continued nomination, so that they could reverse the decision.
So what I will say on that is With Washington and Oklahoma specifically, I believe the Credentials Committee themselves stated they weren't given that list prior to convention. Now, somebody's obviously full of shit. Either they got the list before convention or they didn't. But there is that contradictory statement there. I don't think the opposition to the delegates necessarily had to do with Chase specifically. It probably had more to do with like party national committee positions and stuff of that nature that would be why they so vehemently opposed it. But yes, really what you're hearkening back to is there's some very shady people on all sides of the Libertarian Party spectrum attempting to power grab and interpret the bylaws in a way that benefits them.
Yeah, if I can, I was just going to say, it's almost like how prosecutors and defenders fight to seat their particular jurors because they want the case, the outcome to go their way. And that's kind of exactly the games we're playing right now in the party. Is we're playing with the bylaws so that we can pick our preferred delegates, so that we can affect whatever particular outcome we want. We're doing at the state level, and we're doing at the national level. And look, guys, I know there are preferences. We're all individuals. We come to this, with different, some are minarchists and some are anarchists, and we have certain tolerances and differences there. But if we can't, fucking get on this train together and point it in the same damn direction, I don't even know why we're bothering. That's what's really killing me. I mean, we're shoving people out, we're throwing them in the ovens. I don't know what the hell we're doing, honestly.
Yeah, well, and the other half of it is that right now, I just gotta say, right now, Angela McArdle would rather work with the Trump administration and boost the Trump administration, or boost tweets from RFK Jr. than, support Chase Oliver. And if the chair of the party lacks such confidence for the party as to even support the candidate that is not a war criminal, that is not a gun grabber, that did not start the lockdowns and have such a friendly relationship with vax mega corporations that he had Johnson & Johnson executives on his campaign stage. If it's not even possible for her to pull herself back and support the nominee, then it to me says this party is kind of defunct anyway, because it's like, if it's a person who's supposed to be representing the libertarians in the Libertarian Party would rather support, I'll take the guns first and do due process later, that any organization that is adequately and accurately represented by somebody like that, somebody like Trump, can go fuck itself. I don't give a shit. And when it comes down to it, if they're going to support this fucking slide away from libertarian politics and policies and toward MAGA of all things, to me it's just so asinine. It's just so obviously wrong that that this party is heading toward this direction. And it seems to fucking me that they would rather have fucking Trump than Chase. And if that's the case, I don't fucking care what they say, because they're not even libertarians, and they shouldn't be supporting, representing a party of libertarians.
Well, and that's the thing. This party is full of activists, and there's been this ongoing debate on what the party is and what it should be doing. And, even when I came in 2018, before we had a Mises caucus presence in Michigan. I mean, that debate was going on even then. We had people that were focused on doing the shit in the street. We had people that wanted to run as candidates. We had people that just wanted to show up at convention. We had people that just voted libertarian and did nothing else. And I think that's the thing about the party is there's space for all of that, but that doesn't happen at the national level. All politics is local. That happens in the states and in the counties. It doesn't happen at national. And I think having an activist as the chair is the primary problem, no matter whether it's Angela or some other activist with their other agenda. I think for the party, here's just my opinion, we need the most milquetoast, boring administrator that's only focused on giving the state affiliates and the activists and the candidates the tools they need to do what they need to do. But instead, we're playing these political games within the party to play politics and not even to fucking win. It's annoying.
Yeah, and well, I can see having somebody, interesting, but they have to be primarily interested in the success of the organization. If they're not, if they just want their part of the organization to win, and that's their barometer of success, then they're going to scuttle any opportunities, and that's a gamble that go against the success of their part of the organization. They're going to encourage that internal division. They're going to foster that lack of growth and that negative outcome because they don't give a fucking shit if their side loses. So if somebody is going to be invested in one side, they still have to be impartial enough to be like, we lost. That's fine because the other people who are involved here are also libertarians and we're all on a similar enough mission. And if their fucking shit fails, the marketplace will tell us that. It'll give us the signals. We can fucking experiment with this shit. Instead of being my side has to win, and if it doesn't, I'm going to do whatever I can to put any brakes on this possible, even if it's abjectly and overtly corrupt. Or in the case of Angela, fucking working with the Trump campaign. And I haven't seen jack shit about working with the Chase campaign. What have I seen from that? She talks a big game about, I'm helping Trump pick his cabinet. He's going to get libertarians in his cabinet. Has she helped Chase pick his cabinet? When is that going to happen? I've heard her talk about, getting Trump to pardon Ross Ulbricht. Chase would do that. What the fuck? So it's if you're trying to get, libertarian support for Trump, then you're doing a great job. If you're trying to get libertarians to move to the Republican Party, awesome. You're doing an awesome job, Angie. But if not, you're doing shit. And it's not wrong for people to be opposed to the shit you're doing, because it's a shit job. And that's my bias in this regard. I think when it comes down to it, Angela would rather do a terrible job as an actual representative of this party than admit that maybe she won't get somebody sufficiently fucking Trump-like in office. And that's dog shit. Oh, Angela, also, the other Angela is in chat. You're free to join the stream. The link is in the 8 joint. Also, the author of the article is in chat saying, the LPWA and OKLP lists, from what I understand, were presented to the Credentials Committee, and it was said so by delegates during the convention, as seen by vid linked in the memo itself. Just wanted to clarify that.
I mean, yeah, that was the case that was made, but like I said, somebody's got to be full of shit because the Credentials Committee also claims that they didn't get the delegates presented to them. So somebody somewhere is lying. Well, either the Credentials Committee's lying or they're lying. I guess it's going to come down to where the evidence lies. And unfortunately, the only people that are going to have access to that evidence are LPWA, LPOK, and the Credentials Committee. Nobody else is going to have access to that.
Well, hey, LPWA, OKLP, Credentials Committee, whoever you are, you're free to contact me and clarify for the record, because my show is apparently being seen by people involved in these things, so I might as well use my platform, even though I hate that fucking phrase, to say, hey, I'm here. You got, like, you know, all you fuckers are terminally online Twitter users. Reply to my tweet. So, like, get this going. Let's get this actual accountability up in this bitch. One of you is right, and that person, and that's the thing. People want to be like, well, why don't you have the other side on your stream? Motherfucker, I would, but they're not fucking doing it, and the other side is giving me information, documents, like full meetings, video recordings, like exports, things that I can use. I can't use, I know a guy who knows a guy who says that he's aight. That's not going to work for me. So, if anybody wants the same level of gusto, they got to give me the same level of fucking information. Because right now, I'm very much siding with a very specific group of people. Because those people are fucking talking to me. And those people are the people affiliated with the 8. They're giving me the information. They're giving me the access. And that's where I'm going to go. I'm not going to go with the people who are hiding shit from me and hiding from me in general. Fucking come out and face me. That's my mentality. I will talk to you.
Well, Bryce, I was in the credentials meeting, at least at National, and I know for a fact that when Oklahoma was presented, they clearly stated that their candidates or their delegates had been submitted, and their JC and executive committee had ruled on the matter. Now, whether the credentials committee took that into record and acknowledged it, which I believe they had previously, which is why it was so contentious even on the day that final credentials meeting. And I do know, I don't know, but I did hear that someone did record the entirety of that meeting. So if there was somebody lying, that video, if it does exist, which I think it does, would clearly show that.
If you're referring to the Credentials Committee meeting at National, I believe I was at that as well. Actually, I think I was sitting near, like, relatively close to where you were, if I remember right.
I think you were, yeah.
Yeah. That was an interesting meeting, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, you're free. Either of you are free to talk about any of these meetings. And also, Kareem, if you've got similar situations in your state that you know of where bylaws are being used in order to bully people, you're free to also... Because that's basically what this is about. So... But, like, anyone can start talking about any of these meetings. Like, that's the point of this stream.
Well, I'll just add one comment, considering bylaws are always at issue in Michigan. Beside the fact that bylaws only matter when they matter to Andrew, there is this whole thing about decentralization, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce. I mean, there's a large contingency of anarchists in the Mises caucus, and it boggles my mind how they line up behind authoritarians for an agenda. And it's not that we all agree and consent to move forward, but the fact that they line up behind an authoritarian just boggles my mind. And I'm speaking of for Andrew specifically.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be an accurate statement. A very large contingency of the Mises Caucus are anarchists, myself included. What it boils down to really is the Mises Caucus wants to do a form of organized decentralization, if that makes sense. So yes, their end goal is decentralization, but they're they're targeting it in a very, very specific manner. They want people that they believe are really good at certain things to be hyper focused on those very, very specific things. And as far as the Andrew stuff, I mean, we've been round and round about this at this point. We all know kind of how all of us stand on that matter. It is what it is. There's, unfortunately, as I've discussed with you, there are definitely situations going on that make the Mises Caucus look really fucking bad to a contingent of people. I will say, based on my experience in Wisconsin, clearly that goes both ways, though, because we have a Mises Caucus chair that is very much being targeted and getting bullied around by Bylaw's bullshit.
Yeah, you and I had talked about that. Like, there's a difference between chastisement, correcting behavior, and acknowledging a fault, which I saw in that meeting. And like I told you, I don't know him enough. I haven't had experience with him enough to know, to believe him. Was he sincere in his apology and explanation? And to me, when it went to the suspension, like I said, and it's also probably because I'm so sensitive considering the Michigan situation, it seemed much more punitive than it could have been. And that's where we're getting this all wrong. We're weaponizing, right? And that's the thing, is weaponizing the bylaws to suit whatever.
Right. And the unfortunate thing about that matter is there's a very nice term that the CIA coined. Fuck the CIA, but there's a very nice term that they coined that definitely applies here. It's called blowback. When you weaponize the bylaws against a specific group of people, the only outcome is when that group of people gets power, you can expect the bylaws to be weaponized against you. Once Pandora's box has been opened, there is no going back.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that it started with the last LNC when they started meddling in was it Delaware and New Hampshire, and then
I'm unfortunately not as familiar with. I'm assuming you're talking about Reno. I didn't pay too much attention to Reno outside of Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was before Reno. It was really, with the run up and escalation of the Never Star work and, the reset in Reno.
Oh, so you're talking like 2020.
2019, 2020, yeah. So yeah, when the LNC got involved in local affiliate matters and bylaws became the thing to guide an outcome you wanted, then that Pandora's box was open. And now people are getting targeted right and left. And I think at this point, because it's been 2 years of Mises. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Mises has had a bulk of the states, control of a bulk of the states. They've had the LNC. So it's been, for the last 2 years, Mises against everybody. And now we're seeing it turn around. And again, it's this whole mindset of that weaponization of bylaws, and somebody's got to be sane.
A lot of toxic cycles.
Yeah.
And like so also Angela, welcome, the better Angela. You're free to introduce yourself and start saying words. I'm sure you've got words to say. We're a very word saying group of word sayers. So
Um, is my mic working? I'll
yes,
start with that. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So far, so good. I'm Angie. I'm from Michigan, like Jamie. I'm one of the Michigan 8 being sued by National for winning an election that they didn't want me to win. Basically, that's about it. It's my third time hanging out with Jeremy and the crew, or Jeremiah and the crew, sorry.
I don't fucking
And
care.
yeah, that's going to work out well. I was just listening. I was hanging out listening for a while just to, get up to speed with what the topic was. And yeah, the bylaw stuff it's crazy. I'm not against having bylaws. I do think that they can make an organization function smoother, but the whole purpose of bylaws is that exactly, to make it function smoother. It's not supposed to be used by a minority to grasp control from the majority. A leader should not weaponize the bylaws to his advantage, especially. It goes back to, they don't care if they destroy the group, because when Andrew, I was Mises at the time, back in the Michigan days, when Andrew told me that he was going to do this, I was like, don't do it. You're going to destroy the group, just because he had a partial win. There were some things that we did do wrong, and we freely admitted that, because we're not fucking psychopaths. So, I said, just take your partial win. We'll just have another election and go forward from there. And let the group do its thing. And he's like, nope, he did not care. He was not giving up the seat, and he was going to punish the people that wanted him out. And that kind of fast forward leads us up to where we are today. So yeah, the bylaws, I don't hate them, which is kind of weird because I'm currently being sued over them. But I think at their purest form, they're almost an art where you can, but we're way past that now. You've got people who are just bent on using them only to benefit themselves. What are the odds that every time our judicial committee decision, or any Mises judicial committee, I should say, reaches a decision, it's always in favor of the Mises caucus, and you can't convince me that these guys are all rotor gurus and we're, slobbering idiots. It's just that the system is rigged, and they took the power and they're abusing it. And for the moment, we're kind of stuck with it. Other than because we don't believe in violence. What else? What other options do we have? We can't vote him out. He won't leave. So we're kind of just at a standstill. And I think that's true for the whole country. We couldn't vote Angela out for some reason. I still don't understand that entirely. I do from a political standpoint. Nobody wanted to run a negative campaign, it seemed like. So, a lot of us who are in the thick of this, we are painfully aware of the shortcomings of Angela and her board. But the people who don't follow all this as closely as some of us do, they don't know. They just see this pretty lady up there with a baby, and she's kind of funny and, likable, and yeah, we might as well just vote for her again. Nobody said anything bad about her. That's where you lost. We lost that are in the middle. It's always, no matter what election you talk about, it's always the undecideds that solve it. So.
Also, it's like, just to be somewhat devil's advocate, I know people who are like, I would have maybe voted Angela out, but the other choices were maybe dog shit, or the other choices didn't serve my interests, so why would I choose them over somebody who served at least an interest? There's this other half where if if somebody is bad, and it's true, like, that there's badness there, there's something to be said for just, like, running against them, somebody who's awesome and a good alternative. And the fact is that a lot of these cases, especially with regard to this party, seem to be boiled down to, we don't have a good alt. And that means that we're just going to stick with the one that already has enough. She knows people. Like, she's been working to try and get, like, as many people on her side as possible. And the rest of them might be able to be swayed by the fact that she, you know, did magic at the convention, you know, like, so it's one of those things, like, you gotta run somebody really fucking cool, like, to
You gotta,
oppose.
that person has to run.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just name out there on the internet and go, oh, I want to be the, you know, I want to be on the board.
Exactly.
And my, you know, you have to do, I mean, Karen Ann, you know, as much as I dislike her, she won that seat fair and square. She campaigned for it. She sent out little postcards and she ran ads on the screen during the thing. And, you know, she's a high profile freak, but, you know, nobody else, I mean, just running against her, just running on the, you don't even know my name, but I'm not Karen Ann. That's not enough. You're not going to win like that.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
And bringing this up, this actually just further, I mean, Steven, to me, like, Steven Ecker is a genuine person in my, like, from my personal experience with him. Granted, I could be biased because he's a dirty meacock like myself, but Steven Ecker is not, like, one of the problems with the Mises Caucus. But there are people who were pissed that he got chair. But you didn't run against him. You let Chris fucking Nass run against him, who's hated by literally everyone in the party. Like, what the fuck do you think's gonna happen? Of course Steven's gonna get elected at that point. And two of the people that were really bitching about him getting elected chair are now the two strongest advocates for removing him as chair. And you almost have to wonder if, yeah, they were just sitting around waiting for him to, like, half-ass slip up so they could fucking target him because they didn't want him as chair. But why didn't you run against him then? If you didn't want him as chair, prove that you're better or have somebody out there who's better. Because when you let Chris Nass fucking run, everyone in Wisconsin that's a libertarian knows what a piece of shit Chris Nass is. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Go into that, actually, just temporarily, just because I can't just have on my show just be like, he's a piece of shit, because I don't know who Chris Nass is. So go into that. Let him have it.
Chris Nass is a libertarian. Chris Nass is a Libertarian Party of Wisconsin member that lives in the Madison area. And he is the kind of guy that literally all he does is sit back and fucking make buttons and shit. But then he'll bitch about, like, what this person's not doing, what that person's not doing. This year at convention, he went up to the mic and said he wouldn't endorse Phil Anderson as a candidate, solely because Phil Anderson was ex-military, which anybody who knows anything about the Libertarian Party, a lot of libertarians are ex-military, sorry. He's just, his entire way of approaching things, he is a fucking douche. Nobody in the Wisconsin Party likes him. And he literally only, like, they put up with him because he does the bare minimum to say he contributes.
Yeah, you know, like, fucking claiming that because somebody is ex-military or ex-cop, they can't be a libertarian is fucking asinine to me, because that also means that people who support them in any way, even if they're ex and they regret what they did, like, wouldn't have, like, a party to access. And so many people are relatives of troops, so many people are friends of troops, cops, etc. If you just isolate and say, you can't basically, if once you're touched the statism, you can't touch the Libertarian Party. Well, congratulations, stay small, bitch.
But here's the thing, Chris Nass isn't even an anarchist.
Really?
He hates the term anarchist. He gets pissed when people use it. He's like, don't use that word. It's like, what the fuck do you mean don't use that word? I'm a fucking anarchist. Fuck you, bitch.
Yeah. Well, like,
he literally works for the state, but he's gonna get pissed because somebody was ex-military. It's like, fuck off.
Well, at some point send me a bunch of shit on this situation, because that's amusing. That's giving me a little bit of a smirk in my brain folds. So we'll work in some of that. We'll start talking about some of these bad actors in general. And obviously, if you're one of these bad actors and you want to come on and defend yourself because you're not a pussy, you're free to do so. Hit me up, and the link will be available. But yeah, like, so run people. If you're going to actually say, if you're going to say that you regret who became chair and you had an opportunity to run somebody better, then you should have, and you didn't. And that's one of the reasons that contributed to this shit. Also, we got a question from Orthodox Moore in chat saying, what's the status of the Michigan lawsuit?
Which one?
Any of them. Go for it.
The trademark case is it's plodding slowly through federal court. I believe we're supposed to have a trial beginning next year sometime.
Okay. Sorry.
What else is there? The FEC thing, that's on hold. They haven't said anything, knock on wood, but I suspect they're just going to wait on that until the court stuff is done, because they don't really care all that much. They don't care about the Libertarian Party. That's basically that. If a super PAC was doing to the Republican Party what Mises is doing in the Libertarian Party, there would be all kinds of arrests and, jail time and huge fines and, but nobody cares about the Libertarians. So they're not going to crack down on this nonsense. The Sheboygan suit, we have.
That's a fun name.
I know, right? Michigan's got a lot of those Indian, Native American names.
That sounds like
that. Sheboygan and Charlie Boo and.
I'm not going to be disrespectful in any more ways than that sounds like a trampoline park. Anyway, go ahead.
Now I want to open one there.
Go.
That one, I'm not sure exactly. We have to get with our lawyer at some point this week, I think, and find out exactly what he suggests we do, what we want to do, and of course, how much it's going to cost us. So, I don't want to comment anymore on that because I'm going to say too much, I'm afraid. But personally, that's where I would like to go. I would really like to focus on that because, I don't know, because we won there. Who the hell am I kidding? We won. We had one win there, and I won another one. So
yeah.
That's just it. Now that doesn't mean we're going to get another one. We could get up there and he could hand us our butt again. But the thing is, though, I just think we're really right about all this. That's what really is the most aggravating thing. We had all the parliamentarians except for, JJ and Harlow's tell us that we were right. The things that we did were right and proper. And none of that matters. Nope, doesn't matter. That and we can't get past that. We can't get past that roadblock of them saying, nope, nothing matters. Only thing that matters is what the JC says. Doesn't matter what the rules actually say. It doesn't matter what experts say you're correct. It only matters what, some three goofballs who have never taken a lick of any parliamentarian training.
Oh yeah.
What they say, that's what counts.
Real quick, because Rose she's in chat. She's currently she's a molecular biologist, if I understand correctly. that's the I think that's the term for her position, and she's like stuck late, fucking like collecting mouse DNA, I think. So she couldn't show up to this specific one, but she's in chat and she says the MC leaders are being such torchies, and that's a term I made for people who like libertarians who are like the kind of corruption that libertarians claim to hate, and oftentimes like basically they're libertarians who use the party to be corrupt. So if any of you want to start using the term torchies more, feel free, because I coined that a bit back and it'd be funny. But yeah, so the general vibe I get from a lot of this is that they're weaponizing these things because they couldn't do it normally, and because they don't want to go through the effort to actually select people who are better, and also get those people likable enough and connected enough to get elected. So they're just going through whatever underhanded routes they have to in order to. And this is true of both sides to some extent, but like the primary side that I'm seeing doing this is the Mecox, especially with the 3 states like not nominating Chase, and then the Libertarian Party of Florida fucking doing this investigation, which I don't know if you saw the article that my friend wrote, but I added everyone in the 8 joint about that. Like the general vibe of that article is the memo is bullshit. The people who like were seated were legitimately seated, and it was submitted to the credentials committee prior to the convention, so people should shut the fuck up. Although my friend is much more professional than I am in that regard and did not in fact tell the LNC to shut the fuck up, but I'm doing that because I'm anyway. So the general vibe is like that's like bully pulpit shit. And it's the kind of thing that they said they didn't like happening prior to the Mises Caucus. And now it's just rampant since they took over. And it's like that. It's like the culture war stuff. They said they wouldn't get involved in the culture war. And now it seems like that's happening more and more. And with that being said, it is happening from the other side. Like what Bryce is experiencing is very similar, it seems. Where like the minority decision is the one that's actually reasonable. In a very similar way to what happened to Dana, the minority decision actually like makes sense, and the majority is using numbers to push out somebody who's being reasonable. So it's like it's not happening one way, but it's sort of like it's one of those power ring situations where like the ring of power is possessed by one side or the other, and nobody wants to throw it into the fire. Nobody wants to like break the wheel of the Iron Throne, and people keep on getting crushed by it, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think it's back to what you were saying earlier, is that they want to appoint people who, I guess that they can trust and who support the agenda and who are competent, and they're struggling with that third one, especially, I think. But
nah.
But I mean, you know what? It's the Libertarian Party. It's not that hard to get elected to an office if you want to be serve on if you want to serve. If you want to be on the board, pretty much all you have to do, depends on what state you live in, is show up 2 or 3 times. Somebody will get mad and quit, and then they'll offer you that seat. That's kind of how it works, no matter where you are. California may be different because they've got a lot more people to go through. But I mean, if you look at the number of people who sit on the boards in the first year of their membership, and that's not new. Mises didn't bring that with them. That's just always been the case. We just go through people. I think maybe because we're horrible to each other at some point. Libertarians have this terrible tendency also, I think, that they quit. They get mad and they quit. And that I find that to be terribly frustrating. And and I see the reasons for it. It's my family, or I need to, I'm sick, I get, because if you're sick and you can't serve, then that's just that. Yeah. I need more family time, and I'm just not really all that much touchy feely stuff. I guess it's like I would love to step back. Jamie would love to step back, but we can't because we're being sued. And the other thing is, when I took this position, I agreed to serve for 2 years. I knew the deal when I took it, and it's just not. Even if I get mad at people, I've lost votes. It's hard to believe that sometimes other people feel differently than I do about certain things. And, I didn't get mad. I didn't quit. I go home and, I don't go home because we're libertarians. We do this on the internet. But yeah, you just go back to the table and say, oh, darn, I think they made a huge mistake. And then you find out in a month or a year or whatever, whether they were right or you were right, or if anybody even remembers, it's so much drama over so little sometimes that it's frustrating. But Mises has, they seem to value that camaraderie, the membership, more than other caucuses do. I mean, I don't remember the Prague saying, well, if you're not a Prague, I'm not going to vote for you. Or the Radical Caucus, it seems like, we're lucky if they vote, because they're so anarchy. But, I don't know. I think it's just odd. I think that myself, it's like I was, I'm so positive. And it's like, I came in, you come into the party and you're like, okay, I know we're not going to win the presidency. We'll be lucky if we can win any local elections. But what we can do is lay out the groundwork. We can get people involved. We can meet fun people, hang out with them a little bit. We can get some experience. We can teach people how to knock on doors. We can teach people how to make cold calls. We can teach people how to run a campaign or how not to run a campaign. We can deepen our bench basically. And then if and when that candidate or those candidates come along, we'll have a support system in place for them.
Well, obviously how to knock on doors is like with the edge of your hand and like really leaning into it like the psycho stab, just like pow, pow, pow. And then you just avoid saying police open up. And you get the same effect. They rush to the door because somebody's bashing on it. And then you're like, oh, have you, have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior? I'm trying to think of anybody good in the Libertarian Party. The good news is I'm not a
Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anybody good in the Libertarian Party, and it's a struggle. The general... So, when it comes down to it... Go ahead.
The ultimate anarchist. Just bring up Jesus.
Oh yeah. Well, or because my religion obligates me, I've gotta bring up my crucifix over here. Just like, yeah. Anyway, the general vibe I want to convey, because I think the primary thing that the libertarians get wrong is they try to be too much like the other parties. If your party is at all representable by somebody like Trump and you're trying to be an alternative, you done fucked up. And I would say the same thing if your party is at all representable by Biden. And that's why, even though I am at extreme odds with the Mises caucus, I can get some of their support still when I go against somebody like Josh Ekel and his fucking weird Biden standing and pro-nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and other weird fucking pro-NATO garbage that he fucking spews. There are people in both groups that are problems. But, the general thing is that there should be that thing. There should be that, yearning for principle. And if there's not, then there's not actually going to be any difference between the Libertarian Party and any other party. It's going to be stupid, asinine garbage fucked. And, it's going to Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you though, but what's an acceptable margin of error? Because you've got a guy like Josh Ekel who says that, yes, he wants to make the government smaller. Yeah, he doesn't, I don't agree with him on foreign policy, for example, like some of the examples you were giving. But does that mean that I can't consider him to be a member of the party?
He can be a member of the party if he wants. But what I'm saying is if the overwhelming thrust of libertarians is Biden's A-OK in my book, they're going to be laughed out of the room by people who rightly have problems with Biden from a libertarian perspective. And if Angela is on the other side of that, caping for Trump, who's basically the same as Biden, but more obnoxious in social media presence, it's like, it doesn't matter. And so my margin for error is the overwhelming thrust of libertarians should be people who are sick of the duopoly, who are sick of the way things are, the status quo, in some way want it to change. And if either majority represented side are willing to cuck to one of the major duopolist politicians, that's going to create an inherent internal compromise, if I can fucking say a sentence. Bryce, you look like you want words?
So what I believe the answer to that, Angela, would be actually kind of got discussed in a 2019, I believe it was, debate between Dave Smith and Starwalk. What needs to happen is there needs to be, if you're going to determine if someone is a libertarian or not, there has to be certain principles that are just red fucking lines. You cannot be bad on this issue. And for Dave, for example, the two issues he listed were anti-war and anti-Fed. If you're not anti-war, you're not libertarian in his eyes. If you're not against tearing down the fucking federal government, you're not libertarian in his eyes. That may not necessarily be the exact same red line stances for everybody, but the principle follows. There has to be certain positions that are this is a red line for me. If you're not good on this, sorry, you're not a libertarian.
So what if you can point out a direct contradiction in it? And I'll use Dave Smith as an example. He walks that walk, but on immigration, he's like, he's like, let's build that wall. We got too many people here.
Yeah, that I mean, okay, so that libertarians honestly just shouldn't talk about public borders in general, because really we all end up supporting the same type of border, which is your house is your border, your property is your border, and in that point you have the right to dictate who can and cannot come on your property. The public border situation, the libertarian position on the public border should be the same position we have on any federal shit, which is the federal government should be abolished. Open borders, closed borders. When there's a federal government, both of them are absolute dog shit positions in my eyes.
So, and that's the thing. I had this nice debate, which is neither nice nor really a debate, with three different people at once in the end. Justin Moldau, Jared Howe, and Eric July on borders. And they kept on trying to say that my position is open borders. It's not, because I believe firmly that borders themselves are a statist concept and that it doesn't even apply to private property. I think property doesn't have borders, as it were, as long as you're considering property to be what somebody actually owns, which the left libertarians would disagree with that premise as well, but stick to these terms temporarily for the purposes of this conversation. My thing is I oppose even the concept of borders, and they couldn't wrap their heads around that. So do you think people should just be able to go in my house? No, that's not a fucking border. It's when this, so my position in this regard, I think, and we'll maybe have a fucking 2024 borders conversation, because I guess that's still a subject du jour in libertarian circle jerks, so we might as well spread our seed in that way too. The general vibe is I don't believe in borders as a concept, and I think that, like, when people try to control the borders, they're literally violating, like, the libertarian principles, like whether they say control it for the open purposes or control it for the closed purposes, they're still saying the borders should exist on some levels. And to me, that's a mistake, especially since a key position on the border that should be addressed in any libertarian candidacy that anybody should be able to agree on is end the 100-mile Constitution free zone. And that's something almost none of these motherfuckers are willing to bring up. Because if you talk about ending the 100-mile Constitution free zone, the closed border people who are normally constitutionalists, they don't like that. Because they're like, well, then how do you enforce anything on the border past the border? And I'm like, hey, that's the fun part. You don't. So they don't like that, even though it's more constitutionalist than their fucking position. And the other people don't like that because focusing on that part still, like, allows for the borders to be controlled by the state. And that means that the state is still going to, have some sort of play. So they would like that play to be in their hands and them to be able to say, see, we have better immigration policy. And so, like, when it comes down to it, this could be an issue that libertarians really hone in on, but they don't. They don't say just end that Constitution free zone. That could be something that anybody would be like, yeah, I like the Constitution. But they don't do that because it's much easier to just pretend that the issue is borders themselves, open or closed, rather than focusing on what the actual machinations of the border are, or the, like, resulting things that come from those machinations. That sucks. That's creating so many. So, like, even that, like, that's one of the things. John McAfee was the last person I even remotely considered putting on a ballot. John McAfee had a really good thing to say. Because Dave Smith can say whatever the fuck he wants about borders. He's not going to get presidency. Same with fucking, like, any of the number of these other people. Like, fucking Chase Oliver's probably not going to become president. So whatever he says about what he would do with the borders is sort of largely moot. John McAfee had this really cool thing he said in a Libertarian Party speech 2016. And he said that unless we have the support of grassroots locals, none of the shit that I'm doing in the presidency would even matter, even if I did get in there, because I wouldn't have the support of the locals. And so he said, instead of focusing on me, right now I'm going to use what I have, this limited time, to say, don't focus on me or any presidential candidate. Focus on your local people and try to put them in. He was basically proposing the actual essence of Project Decentralized Revolution before these centralist fucks got a hold of that. And, like, generally speaking, he was right. If you don't have that support, you're not going to get anywhere. So my particular bias in this regard is, even if you could get somebody who's awesome on the borders, it doesn't matter if they're just going to get ousted. It doesn't matter if nobody on their local level gives a shit. It doesn't matter if, like, their people aren't. So it's like, when it comes down to it, a lot of this is pissing in the wind. It's like, if Josh Ekel, for instance, wanted to nuke another, like, populist center because it would end a war early, allegedly, then he wouldn't even have the support of the locals because most people don't know who he is. So he can't get into the presidency. And even if he did, he probably wouldn't have the support of locals to start nuclear Armageddon. People kind of don't like that. So when it comes to it, these people need to focus on getting that support at a local level. And if they want that support on the local level and they're trying to run as a third-party ticket, they cannot be sufficiently like both of the other parties, because then, as Hornberger accurately put it, why the fuck wouldn't I just vote for Trump or Biden? Even though he didn't say why the fuck, because he's way too folksy for that. So it's like, yeah, my margin for error is be significantly different to Trump or Biden. And both of them love the borders, for instance. So you've got to take an extreme stance that's so different to either of them, but people are like, wow, he might actually change the status quo. She, they, I don't care.
But then you come back to, and I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
You get, let's say we have a libertarian candidate who does that, takes your advice and says, you know, what we're not seeing, what we're not talking about is this 100-mile constitution-free zone that drives around our country. This is a travesty. Immediately, you're going to have half the party going, see, he wants borders. He just doesn't want the constitution-free zone. The Constitution isn't even a real thing anymore. It's failed. It's a failed experiment. You know, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like, how, you know, and I don't have an answer here. I always like to have a lot of answers, but people just confuse the heck out of me. You know, you can't, because I'm fine with it. Like, I want no borders. I want people to come and go, and I want them to come here and get jobs and work and buy a little house and have a little family and do the things that people want to do. And, but if somebody came along and said, well, you know what? I'm going to focus on that constitution-free zone, and I'm going to move to triple the amount of immigrants we have. I would be like, yeah, okay, because it's a step in the right direction at least. You know, I don't know. I mean, either I'm a pushover or I'm a pragmatic. I don't know, but anything to make government smaller and people more free, I will settle for that. I don't get why everything, you know, there's this tendency, I think, for us to look at the less than perfect as being evil instead of, you know, it's not perfect, but it's good. You know, we don't seem to have that gene in us. And it's so frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, well, and specifically, and then I'll shut the fuck up because I just gave a spiel that, like, this is a panel. So I do want other, but like, that's one of the things. When you start to look at the actual implication of certain statements and policies, a lot of people don't like that part. Because here's the thing. Like, the immigration policy debate is largely a results-based debate. It's what's happening as a result of certain other policies that's causing the immigration flow to begin with. So, for instance, the migrant shit, like, yeah, there are migrants, but those migrants aren't pifting out of thin air, and they certainly aren't, like, leaving everything that they've ever known in these great numbers, because America's a land of opportunity and freedom. They don't believe that. They're harder than, like, the right-wingers want them to seem. You know, so everybody who wants to control the borders in this regard is ignoring the actual root cause. The sanctions that are placed on their countries, the tariffs, the various, like, toxic spills, the various destruction of the environment by corporations, etc., by some of those corporations being the war military industrial complex, etc., by, you know, installing dictators, by creating instability, by crushing one cartel because another cartel was going to support your pharma institution with under-the-table opiates, you know, like, all these sorts of things. You know, like, the Iran-Contra affair is a real good thing to blackpill people with, because it's like, yeah, they helped a gang and funded terrorists just to get a few of their guys back. How'd that make you feel, Merkin? So, it's when you realize that they're coming here because their places are regionally destabilized that it becomes really clear. And this is just one of the many issues, you know, that it becomes really clear the grounds on which we walk, because, like, if they just stopped fucking those places up, which is the effect of the war and the foreign policies that we have and all this shit, they would have a lot less reasons to come over here to begin with. But if they admit that, then they have to admit that they're not just an ever-present, omnipresent threat that's just pouring over the borders for no reason, and, you know, a migrant horde, invasion, replacement. They can't jack off about that, so they're not going to continue the conversation when you say, hey, maybe it's our fault, and maybe it's a very similar situation to a cop SWAT team fucked up a family's house, and now that family wants compensation and a different place to live. And maybe the government should give that to them because the government fucked up. It's like the same thing, but with migration. the government probably fucked up those migrants' houses in one way or another through one of their disastrous foreign policies, and migration is a form of blowback. And when these people like want into this country so that they can get a scrap of their dignity back, yeah, I don't care. I don't fucking care what any alleged libertarian wants. The only libertarian answer is come. Come over here. Let's do this. Nice. My particular. Go ahead though. Anybody can say words.
I mean, I don't inherently disagree with anything you said there. Like it but like I said earlier, like public borders in general. Now, obviously, yes, you and I are probably going to use different definitions on borders, because I do actually think when you own property, the property you own does objectively have borders. It's the land you own is in of itself a form of a border. But public borders in of themselves should be vehemently opposed by everybody. So the open borders position is dog shit. The closed borders position is dog shit. The answer is fucking abolish the goddamn fucking state that has been bombing children, men, women to fucking hell and back in other countries, and have destabilized their areas to the point where they have no choice but to fucking come here.
Yeah, it's like the second longest conflict the U.S. has been in has been Somalia. We're still in Somalia. The U.S. AFRICOM situation is still fucking with Somalia, and a significant amount of the refugees that are coming to the U.S. are Somalian. I wonder why. So, anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying I think that everybody's wrong in that regard, and that, like, even if they did stick to the Constitution-free zone, that they still wouldn't be going far enough, but, like, at least it would be a step in the right direction of acknowledging the corruption of the border to begin with. You know, at least that would be a place that my brain could go and be like, that guy kind of gets it a little bit, maybe. To answer Angela, basically. Anyway, y'all are free to say words. The call is dead.
I mean,
I have killed the call with fucking anarchist conspiracy bullshit. But Jamie, did you want to say something?
I actually just was going to say that I do have to jump off here, but I just wanted to finish up that again, you know, there's some divergent positions within the party, even in the anarchist movement, which I hate, because to me, anarchism is the most pure and liberatory of all of the philosophies, and it's because it doesn't assume that there is only one way to do anarchism. And I think that the LP needs that a little more, is that we need to pre-configure the world that we want to live in, and not everyone wants to live in the same type of community. And what we should be doing is supporting individuals, not enforcing our vision of that, but empowering them to create those communities. And again, as a party, you chip away at the state, you chip away at regulations, you chip away at restrictions on those liberties. And I just hate that this is what we're bogged down doing.
Yeah. So I guess then we'll start closing statements. We've been going on for almost 2 hours, so everybody can start to say words. Angie, if you've got anything you want to like take as long as you need to, and you know, say your closing piece, and for reference for anybody who's interested, who's here right now, there's going to be another stream on Sunday where we're going to be going over the final planks of the paleo strategy. And there's probably going to be more paleo discussions at some point later, but we're getting to the burnout point of this discussion where we're like, yeah, this kind of sucked. So there's lots more to discuss involving that, because like it's a very complex situation. But with that being said, like any of you who want to attend that too it'll be around 7 p. Eastern on Sunday. So feel free. I will throw the link up in the 8 joint. Angie, words.
Well, thanks again for letting me hang out with you guys. I'm cooler for having done it. I'm addicted to social media. Kind of sad to say, but anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, I'm Angela T0763. If you want to help us fight for our to get our affiliate back, you can donate at www.lncfight.org/Michigan. And we definitely appreciate that. Other than that, I will maybe try to make it Sunday. I'll also have to watch the first part of the episode because I wasn't here for that edition. So,
it's been going on for weeks.
Well, I'll watch maybe the last couple then. Anyway, thanks. Yeah, thanks for letting me hang out, and hopefully I'll see you Sunday.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and for the 8 actually throwing me documentation and shit. Cause like, I'm down for facts. I want facts, and if people are willing to actually give me information and work with me, I'll talk to them. So the fact that y'all have done that is much better than the other side. I'll say that. So. Thank you both for coming on. Bryce, and then Kareem, if he's even still conscious. Yeah, Kareem is there.
I'm conscious. Or unconscious, maybe not. I was just kind of listening. I don't have a lot of input on like the Libertarian Party really much anymore because I'm still active in it. I'm still doing local stuff. But I don't think I'm not going to say that people say there's no political solution. I would just say this. There is, but like if a government's not local, you don't control it. Like as Aaron from Reeducation says, who does, if you watch a series on Anarcho-Communism 101 or Democratic Confederalism, you need to vote on policy, not people. No one's voting on policy. They're voting on people. I don't care actually about voting on people because you don't know what they're going to do. But if you vote, if you get your local community to vote on policy, that's how we move forward. So I'm a fan of democratic and federalism, communalism, stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to communicate to the Libertarian Party because I think most people have it backwards where they think, oh, I have to vote for Chase Oliver, I have to get a president, and then the president there, even if Chase won, I have to go top, then state, then local. I'm like, you have this backwards. You want to go local if you need it, confederate, and then confederate larger for something. Although I don't think we need super large confederations unless it's something for like, next big nation state threat. So that's my thing. I don't know if Angela has Trump's number or not. I can't prove it. I don't have her phone. I don't know if she's texting him or anything. I don't know if she's supporting him or not. I'm trying to stay out of the party politics and just, I'll support Chase, but I'm trying to tell people, look, there's a better way to do things. Book Chin laid out how to do them. And yeah, I'm still part of a party, but I'm not super enthusiastic like I once was.
You think there are better and worse ways to maybe use it, and you want the vehicle to actually work for you rather than some sort of like systemic like majority or like the continuation of the status quo.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't agree in the direction he went, but like my vice chair, Bill Cox, he's a good guy. He's part of Pennsylvania. You guys can connect with him. He told me, I saw him in Walmart, and he said, look, I'm done with Mises. I'm going to support RFK. Not a fan of RFK. Not a fan of any of those guys. I like Jill Stein, Chase Oliver, and Cornel West. But he said, look, the Mises caucus has gone too far Republican. I don't want, to deal with it, or they're going too far on the culture war. I said, yeah, I agree. And I said, well, I was on some streams with like my mutualist friends and my other anarchist friends, and they just said, why don't you give a book, or why don't you hand out a sandwich to home, or go to a soup kitchen, help somebody, and then say, hey, yeah, how you doing? Good, yeah. All right, here's Conquest by Bread by Peter Kropotkin. Read this, or here's Utopia in the State by Bakunin, or anything, Anatomy of the State. And he said, you'd be better off giving a homeless person a sandwich and an anarchist book than joining into this Libertarian Party stuff. In some ways, I agree.
Well, so two things. First off, get Bill Cox in a conversation with me. We'll do a stream maybe about that at some point, and we'll talk like the pros and cons of RFK in an open and honest discussion. I think that'd be an interesting thing to do. But the second thing is your plugs.
All right, plugs. You can find me on Twitter at Kareem6633. I'm trying to be more active there. You can also check out Anarch Unity. I want to shout out Keith Preston's website because he updates it regularly. Attack the System. Literally any form of anarchy you could think or couldn't think of. Like if you want to know Buddhist anarchism, it's a thing you can find on his website. So go check out Keith's website. Check out Jeremiah Server EXE. If you want a Unity server specifically focused on Unity, Mike or my friend Mike's not here today, or Bread, but go check out the Mad Liberty Project on Discord. That's it.
Bryce, words.
Words. Okay. So to kind of harken back on what I've been saying all along, we need to stop fucking wasting time on this bullshit, like infighting shit. We need to focus on what we need to do to fucking push the goddamn liberty movement and forward and just quit with the bullshit. Like, unless I understand ousting people from positions of power if they do something that warrants ousting them. But weaponizing your fucking governing documents to try and oust somebody you don't fucking like instead of just running against them and saying, hey, motherfucker, I can do this shit better than you and watch me. Like, you're bogging down what we're supposed to be trying to fucking do, which is actually move the liberty movement in a positive fucking direction, and you're bogging it down instead with bullshit infighting. Enough's enough. Let's fucking move forward.
All right. And I will say thank you to all of the people who showed up today. I know it was weird scheduling and variety of other problems, but all that being said, things might be more possible the more of these discussions we have, because people are listening. People are watching this. Like, Andrew, fucking plenty of people are seeing these sorts of conversations happening, and they should be happening. It should be more of an open dialogue, and less like I have to see, all these documents that, Mises Caucus didn't hand me, and all these sorts of things. Because these conversations are happening in the public, and this is how it should be. Whether or not you're on the Mises Caucus side, whether you're on the CLC side, whether or not you're in any of these positions, the fact that these conversations are happening is having an impact. And one of the impacts that I want this conversation to have is to know that what's going to happen to Dana in 2 days, where they're going to where they're waiting till she's out on a religious holiday so that they can oust her, that's fucking evil. And the kinds of things that are happening maybe with the situation in Wisconsin are also possibly evil. The Libertarian Party has to be a party of principle. And so much of the reason that I stopped my activism with them originally, and so much of the reason that I've been so loud and angry and shit, is because a lot of it is not a party of principle. Like, it's a party of evil. And like fucking, they keep they keep fucking pushing to power people like Adrian Malagon, which just sounds like a villain, and then hey, he also acts like a villain. And you know, fucking, they keep having these power struggles where they're trying to manipulate and weaponize and fucking target and attack. If this is the liberty movement will fail. So if you want it to fucking like succeed, be different, be principled, stand for those principles, and stop this bullshit where it's like, you know, once we have the power, we're going to, you know, fracture and attack and do anything we can to maintain that shit, even if it completely destroys something. We need better. If the Libertarian Party is to succeed, there needs to be better, not the same, not competitive. Like, when Javier Milei brought his inflation...
And they have to understand...
Go.
Oh, they have to understand you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. If you're Mises and Chase Oliver wins, okay, fine. Like, figure out how we can do the best with that. This is your vehicle now. Like, okay, it's not maybe your ideal. Okay, Dave Smith didn't run. Okay, Michael Rectenwald didn't work. Okay. Like, I'm not going to sit there and lose my mind over it. There are people like, I can't call myself a libertarian anymore. I'm like, okay.
Bye.
Why? Because you don't like Chase Oliver. You don't have to like Chase Oliver, but okay, there are ANCOMs that maybe I don't like for whatever. There are ANCOMs that are pro, you know. I'm sure there are probably some bookchin people that lean pro-Marxist. I'm not going to stop calling myself a communalist because there are bad actors in any space. There are bad actors, and like, I think people who are disciplined ANCAP should still call themselves an ANCAP, even though Milei is calling himself an ANCAP and he's acting like a neoliberal. So, or some combination between a neoliberal and some fascist, South American dictator.
And the reason I brought Milei up is sort of to bring it to a close, to talk about how the libertarian movement is in such deep poverty on a philosophical level that they are willing to support somebody like him. And one of the things that they dredge up is that he lowered inflation. He might have brought it from his initial spiking of that inflation to 25.5% higher than it was when he got into office to now like 10-ish, but that's like around commensurate to the level of increase that it would have been on the normal chart. So congratulations at not being any different. And like, if the Libertarian Party is, if their slogans could be boilable down to 2 slogans, it's okay when we do it. And also, we're not worse, but we're not better either. Then you're not going to convince people to leave the others. So,
well, if you watch Anarchs, which I get it, Anarch banned me from a server because I said private property should exist. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. That's fine. I get their lib socks. Like, maybe I'll try again. Like, there are people who are anti-unity I can learn from, and then I don't agree. But it broke down what hierarchy is, which is a sophisticated way of understanding power structures. And if you look at horizontal, which just means a horizontal power structure just means you hit people up in your community and you're like, let's vote on this, and then you do something. Or not. But I said the simple answer to my problem with Milei, my problem with Daniel McAdams supporting Putin is my problem with people cheering on EU elections. I don't care if Macron loses or not. I don't care if Schultz wins or not. I don't really care about Viktor Orban. The thing is, they're all unnecessary. Like, people conflate the left. They're like, they want to get rid of all hierarchies. No. They want to get rid of all unnecessary hierarchical power. And a president is unnecessary hierarchical power. So until we get rid of hierarchies that don't matter, which could even include the libertarian chair after we get rid of this, then we're going to be stuck in this point. Right. The left is right in the sense that if you want a voluntary society, you have to get rid of hierarchies that don't matter. Milei is a hierarchy that doesn't matter. And furthermore, I actually even commented on a thing like, isn't Milei better than people in Congress? I said no. If Milei wants to be more, Viva Libertad, Carajo, and all this stuff, he would abolish his presidency. He would abolish regional governments. He would make a popular assembly and vote like everybody else.
Yeah.
That's it.
So that's how I want to close my ending. My closing statement is be different or don't be surprised when it's the same old shit. And if you're not different, then you will never have any possibility of smashing the fucking state.
Smash all unnecessary hierarchies.
Hear, hear.